Geekly! This week, we're gonna have opinions on gaming, a Netflix sick binge, bro, and a week you'll rad. And now your host, Mike Digliglio.
Wow, what is up, team? Welcome to K&M Geekly. Just a sneak peek at two not 100% geeks talking about some of the things getting them through their week. Keith Varney, let's start with the topic of the day. We both had experiences with the virus that shall no longer be named. Gee, damn it! But I guess we're going to talk about it. From different sides of the spectrum. Let's quickly talk about it and see how we're feeling. How you doing, buddy?
Oh yeah, well, you know, I'm right before Thanksgiving. You know, timing is always spectacular.
They say location, but really it's timing.
It's all in the. Yeah, so I've got the vid. I'm totally fine. All is well. Aaron Rodgers be damned, because I'm good and vaccinated. I have barely a minor cold as opposed to a terrifying, life-threatening event. Thank you, science. But that does mean I'm going to be spending extra time in the basement quarantining. And before you are too concerned, before you are too worried, that Jillian is going to the grocery store, and before she leaves to visit her family, so I am fully masked inside my own home so as to not transfer this to other people. She is picking up the Thanksgiving essentials of crescent rolls and sweet pickles.
Great. Good. I'm so glad to hear that everybody's feeling well. And also, thanks. I have to do some extra reading, but I was just doing a quick scroll while I was getting up this morning, and apparently the Supreme Court said that, hey, guess what? You can indeed have vaccine mandates for work still. Turns out that's...
Oh, I did not see that. That just came through the transom today?
Yeah, the details to follow. Mike just did a cursory glance. Perhaps there was something...
Ah, good. Well, with this court, you always got to check the fine print.
So Keith is feeling okay. He had mentioned that he was just feeling just like the littlest bit of malaise. But I will say I had the newest booster, so I'm super boosted. Moderna through and through at this point. My molecules are Moderna. But I had one of the worst...
Don't forget Bill Gates' microchip.
Yeah, of course. But I got that voluntarily. I signed the waiver.
Yeah, fair enough.
Keith, it messed me up. See, the past couple of years, I've gotten the double up, the flu vaccine and the COVID booster at the same time. Yep. I wanted to separate it this year because I had a Mike and Deglio hypothesis that it was the combo that was making me get so sick with the boosters, because I've had a bad round of these, or a bad side effects.
Yeah, the boosters kick your ass. I don't even notice them.
But I thought it for sure it had to be the discount double check. So speaking of Aaron Rodgers, so I just got the COVID booster this year because I'm stepping on another cruise ship over the Christmas time, and I wanted to make sure it was good. Long story short, dude, 48 straight hours of just ass kicking. It was worse than the last time I had COVID, the symptoms. So the internet tells me that means it's working. So I'm going to give you the thumbs up.
I mean, it was pretty funny, like on our text thread with Jen, right, which runs 24/7 now. I'm like, yeah, I've got COVID. I'm fine. And Mike's like, I got a shot. I'm dying.
Dude, it was bad. I was shivering. My arm hurt. I was all kinds of headache and then I woke up yesterday morning. My sheets were soaked. The fever broke, and I feel great. So hopefully I'm super bionic now. But like Keith said, science. I know that I'm doing my part for society. So
we are all grateful. So I mean, you know, and it is good to check in, and because it's one of those things that like feels both like it was yesterday and also some weird fever dream that, you know, we'll never quite remember. 3 years ago today, this would have been a much scarier, much more awful experience. And here we are like, oh, okay, I got COVID. Oh, it's so annoying. It's messed up my travel plans. Oh, I'm going to have to sit in my jammies and watch TV. Damn. Think about where we were 3 years ago.
I will, because I went to... as I was waiting, you know, they make you wait the 15 minutes to make sure you don't like die in the Walmart. And,
which apparently for you is probably a good idea.
Yeah. But I remember getting the first vaccine. I remember getting in, and
oh my God, yeah.
I was like 15 minutes from my dad's cemetery, so I went over to the cemetery. I just cried and cried and cried, not because I was at the cemetery, but because I was like, I felt like I could take a deep breath and release it for the first time.
No, me too. I think I drove like 90 minutes to South Jersey because that's the only place I had an appointment, and I was like, this is the only time I've been grateful to be fat because I get a little bit earlier, and it was just sort of like, yeah. I mean, I cried in the car, 100%.
All right, so from crying in the car to crying on the couch, so because sick, got to play some video games.
Oh, yeah, because I never turn it on when I'm healthy.
Yeah, I want to start out, I'll start out here because Keith, played, I have a button for this now. I played, finally, it's been on my wish list, Spider-Man, Insomniac and Marvel's Spider-Man 2 on the PlayStation 5. It's exclusive for now, coming to PC probably next year or sometime. So let me give you the info first before we get going. As I said, developed by Insomniac Games. It's the sequel to Marvel's Spider-Man 1, but really it's the third in a trilogy because there was this kind of a mini game, Miles Morales, which actually I preferred to the first game. Directed by Brian Intar and Ryan Smith, main artists Jacinda Chu and Davidson Carvalho. Incredible score by John Pisano, and it was released back in October. So there you go. The main here are kind of my feelings with this. I thought Starfield was going to be my game, and I've enjoyed it. I've enjoyed pipping and popping, but I haven't had a game in quite a while. I've enjoyed Assassin's Creed Mirage, loving Alan Wake 2. I'm going to come back to that, but I kind of want to mainline that and be in the right place to kind of put the pedal to the metal on it. Spider-Man 2 is the first game in quite a while that I have been binging, like for hours at a time. Yesterday, evaporated. I had like an hour in. I was going to talk about my hour impressions. I'm now 12 hours in. I played this game for 11 hours yesterday. Just blitzed it. Football was on the small screen. Spider-Man and me had a go at it. And let me kind of paint the picture this way, because this is where we are in video games that I can't quite wrap my head around. The first Spider-Man game was incredible. It was so much fun. It felt to me... Now, hold on, let me backtrack a little bit. Keith knows I like comic books. I've always been a DC guy. I liked Superman. I like Marvel. I like Spider-Man, but Spider-Man was never my jam growing up. I watched, the cartoon... but I was always, like, my big cartoon was the Batman, the animated series. Spider-Man was into, but it's just, like, never my thing. Even the Sony reboots with Tobey Maguire back in the day, or the Sam Raimi films, enjoyed, but never got me jumping in the air. It wasn't until the first Spider-Man game and then that first Miles Morales movie, Across the Spider-Verse, that I really started to appreciate what Spider-Man is. Spider-Man is the everyman, the true everyman, kid, teenager, the experience kind of we all had making your way in life, your formative years, getting, superpowers. So, the first game to me, what Insomniac was able to accomplish in that game was literally making me feel like what it would be to be inside of a comic book. Right, to play a comic book. It really felt like you were inside of it. The whimsy, the kind of the fun of swinging around. They captured it perfectly. Webbing up bad guys. The combat was really fun. Great period of time. The sequel was a smaller venture. Miles Morales, I thought, really captured New York. A very specific time in New York. Christmas time. The snow falling. If you've ever been in New York, not as a tourist, but like lived there, this captured that feel. This third game, they've just blown it up, man. Now it's not just Manhattan. It's all the boroughs. No Staten Island, because let's be honest.
Is Staten Island a borough, right. Really?
They've blown it out, and this is what it feels like to be Spider-Man in a Spider-Man film. So it is perfectly paced. It is the story thus far. I'm about 60% in. It is perfectly paced. There are more things to do. It is a very curated experience. Now, it's an open world game for sure, but the narrative is first and foremost in the plotting of this game. So it doesn't tunnel you down the main events of the story, but as you sort of pip and pop on the side things, like you have little side quests you can do, every once in a while they'll like beep in and be like, yo, XYZ is happening. It's important. The main story now continues. So it's a much more curated narrative than you get in your open worlds. A lot of people don't choose not to even go to the main path in open worlds. They just go and F around for a while, which is totally cool, however you want to play it. Insomniac, I feel like, has decided we want the main quest to be what you're doing. I'm sure we'll go back and pick up the other stuff when the game's over, but they are funneling you down. And while they do that, they take a time out every bit of time, and you're like, okay, you're going to be Peter Parker now. You're going to be Miles now. You've got to do this life thing. I've read and I've heard from some folks, they're not into that. They want to be the choose your own adventure style. This is a comic book game. I want to go do what I want when I want to do it. I get that criticism. It does not apply to me. I think the pacing is so perfect, and I am so much role-playing these characters and being in this world that I love that. I love that, hey, me and my buddies are going to Coney Island right now. We're going to ride all the rides. We're going to shoot hoops. We're going to, now my friend has to go. She's a tagger. She's like a graffiti artist, so I got to go help her and do some spray painting. There's so much to do here. The main narrative is emotional. I went in and tweaked some of the difficulty settings so that I could be just a little bit badder ass than I think I'm supposed to be right now. So I maybe am flying through the game a little faster than people who are playing on the stock difficulty. 8-year-old Mike can't believe what video games are doing, man. I was showing Keith last night.
Yeah.
I went to my apartment in my little corner of Astoria and sat there, and it's not 1-to-1 because I have to build in the entirety of New York, but it is close enough. There are screenshots that you're like, oh my God, I've been there. And that's not like, it's not like looking at the Empire State Building where everybody knows that. This is like my corner of my park. It's just crazy. In fact, I have a couple of screens that I just quickly captured that I wanted to show. This is in engine. I was at Coney Island with my lady, Mary Jane, and we're on the Ferris wheel looking at the fireworks. I mean, okay, that's a video game, PS. This is the photo mode, which is a lot of fun to play with. You can put little postcards together. This is me in my zoot suit in front of Radio City.
Hilarious.
This is just during action combat. It's all in engine. This is me checking out Times Square as Spiderman.
Wow. Just
looking into New York City. This is just things that are possible. The lighting on HDR on my OLED screen. I just am sitting on perch tops while I'm supposed to be saving the world, Keith, just looking at the vistas because it's just incredible. So listen, the biggest, I guess, thumbs up / thumbs down in this world where we're so close to everybody being able to play everything on everything. There are still so many walled gardens. I understand the commerce of that, but I just wait for the day where me and you can both be playing this. You're playing it on your Xbox at home. I'm playing it on my PC, through my phone, through an iPad, through a hotel Wi-Fi. We're so close, but I know that you're not going to get to play this game. So it kind of sucks that that's the case. But hey, that's where we are. That's Marvel Spider-Man 2 on PlayStation 5 exclusively right now.
Yeah, I mean, it looks super exciting. I mean, that's the reason that I got into the Grand Theft Auto world after 2, which was a top-down little like RC car kind of a thing, was Grand Theft Auto 4 takes place in New York City.
And Grand Theft Auto 6, which is coming out probably next year or the year after. There's a big trailer dropping in December. I think they're going back to Vice City.
No, they're in Miami.
Right, that's correct.
Yeah, we're gonna have to wait till 7.
Miami is Vice City, right? Yeah, Liberty City is New York.
Oh, okay. Yeah, you're right.
So
Liberty
I'm wrong and right, but back to what you're talking about.
Whatever. But anyway, yeah, the being able to drive around in a video game in a world that you are very familiar with. I mean, because you were sending pictures from Astoria Park, where we both lived in Astoria and spent a lot of time in Astoria Park, and I got married in Astoria Park, and even that way back in 2008 had Astoria Park. I could drive a bus into the pool. I'm like, this is crazy. really fun, really immersive. So I have some video games I want to talk about too, but from the bleeding edge of technology and incredible visual storytelling, emotional stories, story depth, and character building, and high impact action. I've been playing games about zoning and budgets. Because this scratches some sort of an itch in my head. So I've been playing Jurassic World Evolution 2.
Which I've heard incredible things about.
And Cities Skyline remastered. I guess I should have been playing 2. Whatever it is. They're all in Game Pass. Which I have
Game Pass,
through the generosity of Mike and Deglo,
has hooked you on the jugular, right?
No, it's going to turn off on December 17th. But
well, it was a good run.
It was a good run while I had it.
Yeah.
But basically, these are essentially zoning games.
They're like SimCity like.
SimCity, yeah, exactly. It's SimCity where you're building out roads and you're like, I'm zoning this for commercial versus industrial, and like, I need a grade 5 fence to keep the T-Rex in here, and I need the budget. I got to send scientists out to get the eggs or whatever. It is a very different part of your brain that this stuff scratches. But like for me, like, let me get this traffic pattern to work so we don't have traffic here. Oh, there's too many lights in a row. Let's put a roundabout in. For whatever reason, this scratches a part of my brain that just kind of like the Borg. I'm looking for order, and I'm looking for things to line up neatly and make sense and be well balanced. And so I'm not the only person who likes to have this itch scratched because these games exist.
Oh yeah,
and they're popular.
I lived for Roller Coaster Tycoon for years. It was like the only game I played.
Me too.
Yep.
Loved Roller Coaster Tycoon. And you'd think that it would be about the roller coasters, but for me, it's like, it's about the budgets. It's about like, how do I entice the right amount of people to come and make this profitable? And that's, and the Jurassic World, and look, is this like a cheap, like tie-in to a movie that wasn't even that good? Yeah, it sure is, but it's very different. Like it is not you'd think it's like running and shooting dinosaurs and running. No, it's not that at all. It's like, you have to build a wider path in order to get the people to the concession stand.
Like if you put the T-Rex enclosure up though, it's like, can you zoom in and watch the T-Rex like go about his business?
You sure can. Yeah, cool. No, you can. I mean, look, these graphics are fine, but they're not going to compete with Spiderman. But they're totally fine. But you can zoom in. You can fly around anywhere you want. You can go in as a guest and walk the paths you've done and walk through the paddocks, that kind of stuff. And the dinosaurs escape and eat people and whatever. But I don't care about that. I'm much more about zoning. It's really fun. I'm like on the condo board. But I find these games super satisfying. They're great to just sort of like let run while you're maybe chain watching a show that ran for 23 years and have to take a lot of notes, but you don't want to give it your full attention because it's too sad. It's great to have this game to be zooming around on while you're doing it.
Yeah, City Skylines I really enjoyed, and I downloaded I had a bunch of the expansion packs like that really blew out the systems and did a lot of cool stuff. Interestingly, talking about, the walled gardens and commerce and such, and money just being the bane of all things, Keith. City Skylines 2 just came out, right? Their big new evolution of their engine, and they have all this kind of new fancy stuff, and they showed all the trailers of like, you just kind of like draw the path, and then it like, or put the road here, but then like neighborhoods pop up around it, and like there's all this stuff interacting. Well, they wanted to get it out faster than people could handle, the teams could handle, and there was crunch, but they had to release it anyway. And so I downloaded it with much aplomb, and it was just a buggy, broken mess. And I have a really beefy computer, and I could barely run it. It was like jank. So really? I had to return it and get my money back, which I got. Steam has a great, if you play for under 2 hours, they basically give you your money back if you don't like it. And it's a shame because that game is going to have an uphill battle to fix all of its problems and, first impressions are bad. It can be done. You can kind of build your reputation back, but it's going to take some work. And I just feel bad that it kind of had to get released in such a crappy mess. But City Skylines is still there for you. And I might have to check out Jurassic World because you're like not the only person who said they really enjoyed their time with it. So
yeah, it's really satisfying, and it's it is exactly what you want it to be if you want Sim City, but trying to run a dino park. It's essentially Roller Coaster Tycoon but dinosaurs.
Yeah,
and so it's fun. It really really satisfying. Difficult. Like, if you don't just keep giving yourself more money.
Yeah, which is what I always, me. I just like keep putting.
Oh no, I don't like easy mode.
Yeah, I don't.
Like, give me unlimited funds. No, and like I 100% cheated because I really wanted my park to go because it was really fun. So there it is. That's the type of games. And it's the weird thing. I think for me, games for the most part are just number generators because it makes my brain happy. I play Madden. To generate numbers, like for 10, 15 years, playing out careers. I don't care about winning the Super Bowl. I care about hitting benchmarks with all the stats of the players that I've created.
Yeah, as I've gotten older, I found myself, like, once I kind of tire of the, like, on MLB The Show, once I sort of tire of the gaming, or like this year, I love the game, but the Phillies got blown out in the National League Championship Series, and so I couldn't do baseball anymore for a while. Like, I needed a mornings.
Yeah.
So the GM modes, where you can just kind of be top level GM and just sort of take a crappy team and do like a 20-year rebuild without having to play the games. You can sim the seasons. Is actually really satisfying for the same reason. It's just numbers and like contracts, but it's kind of satisfying.
Yeah, well, I mean, it scratches a strange little part of my brain. So I do enjoy. I mean, I could just write down numbers in a notebook. I don't need to do all this, but I do. I like doing it.
Well, it's nice with colors. So, as I was fever dreaming on the couch, I just put on the Netflix and I let it pick for me. And Keith, it gave me two pretty cool, different picks that one I probably would have watched on my own. The other I wouldn't have. And so I thought I'd talk about them briefly here. The first is a show called Till Murder Do Us Part, the Suring investigation. Suring versus Haysom, excuse me. So this was this murder took place back in '89. So it was, we were, I guess, could have taken notice of it, but we weren't watching true crime.
We could have been the murderer. We don't know.
We weren't really watching taking too much stock in true crime at 9. At least I wasn't. Can't speak for you, Keith. So I had like a tangential hearing about this because it's come back up in the press over the years, but didn't really remember the details. And so this was a good kind of telling of this story. And let me give you just kind of the basic outline. These two people were teenagers at the time. This lady's parents end up dead. This guy, whose dad is a German diplomat, so he's got 2 passports, confesses to the murders, okay? She gets arrested. He's off in Germany. She claims in her trial that he did it. All right? Boyfriend did it. I told him that they were bad people. I didn't tell him to kill them, but he killed them. Then they extradite him back. He says, I didn't do it at all. She made it up. So what's the truth? Is there truth? How does one of them, the guy here, plays the press hard, whereas she's trying to kind of just like do her time and get out of prison. It's really interesting. It's kind of takes some crazy turns. It's maybe a little long. It's 4 parts. They're about an hour each, so it's probably about an hour to 2 hours longer than it needs to be. But it's interesting. It's basically a Dateline that got blown up into 4 episodes. But it is interesting. It shows a lot from the trial, a lot of firsthand knowledge. I'd call it less a documentary and more just sort of a, like I said, a news magazine feel to it. But it's interesting. And the ending, whilst not entirely satisfying, Keith, because believe it or not, there's only 4 people who know what happened, and 2 of them are dead. And 2 are trying not to be in prison. So I'm not sure we're ever going to get the super truth. But it wasn't a waste of my 4 hours. And I would say if you're into the true crime like I am, this one's worth a watch on the Netflix. So there you go. There's there's that one. And then the other one, which I never would have watched in a million years, Keith, was called Squaring the Circle, the story of Hipgnosis. And I have to pull up my wiki because I never heard of these people before. And I doubt you have either. Do you know who Hipgnosis is or was, Keith?
I certainly don't. I don't even think that's how it's spelled, but obviously I'm wrong.
Yeah, so these are visual artists, okay, whose names I don't know. They went by pseudonyms back in the 60s and 70s. It was Storm Thurgenson and Aubrey Poe Powers. They went by Storm and Poe. They met in Cambridge. One was a photographer. One was sort of just like a visual artist, a mixed media visual artist. And what they became famous for is basically stumbling into, one was kind of pals with, oh my God, Dark Side of the Moon. You know.
Joe Biden.
No, the most famous band of all time. Pink Floyd. Oh my goodness. One was friends with Pink Floyd, and they were like, hey,
Fran Drescher.
Help us make our album cover. And so what they became famous for was basically making all of the famous album covers from the 60s and 70s. This is before Photoshop, Keith. So they were doing mixed media, taking photographs, doing all magic in the dark room with whilst creating a studio in London that was just an absolute chaotic shit show, and just how for one of the Wings albums for Paul McCartney, Paul McCartney spent like $2 million on this little statue, like a little figurine statue, and then they flew it to the top of Everest in a helicopter and like took pictures up there. Well, not actual Everest, but a Himalayan mountain, and just like instead of just doing it in the studio, they just spent all the money to fly up there. Just like crazy excess, just insane things. It's about 90 minutes, I think. And it's really interesting. It's like insight into an art form that you barely even hear about anymore, because now artwork for albums is this big and it's a little thumbnail that no one looks at and thinks about. And just how it was an entire industry, and how these visual artists went about creating art, and how art doesn't have to be just a picture or just a this. And there are kind of no rules, and it's all about art in its most pure form is devoid of rules, is devoid of, is all based on interpretation, and this kind of explores that, and it's really interesting. These two guys are really interesting. Their kind of partnership is part friendship, part love, part hatred, all the good stuff that comes in a partnership.
Yeah, it's just basically us, is what you're saying.
Yeah, in many ways, in many ways. So it's absolutely would have been on my radar, but it's a high recommend for me. And there you have it, Keith. That's what my fever dream was watching. Did you watch anything randomly on your fever dream whilst sick?
I mean, not any. All right, the most random thing I watched was Hell Comes to Frogtown.
You'll have to tell me what that is.
Well, look it up. It's it's a low budget 80s horrible sci-fi film starring Rowdy Roddy Piper, who bangs a frog lady. You don't want to miss it. Just
okay. That one rocketed to the top of my must-watch list.
That's like immediately. That's my number one thing I'm going to watch now.
All right, so let's cap things off with a little weekly rad, Keith. Anything you want to mention this week?
Oh, well, you go first.
Okay. I'll mention. So I think I mentioned on the show I'm reading Stephen King's newest full-length novel called Holly. It's a supernatural thriller / kind of return to the horror genre for King, about Holly Gibney, who's a private investigator, tracking down
who has been in many of his novels.
Yes, some of his true crime novels, or like pulpy crime novels, tracking down a potential set of serial killers. TBD.
Okay.
But that's not the point that I wanted to bring up about this. What I wanted to bring up about this is that I love audiobooks, but one of my problems with audiobooks is that I tend to read very quickly. So when you listen to an audiobook, you kind of want the story told like how your brain tells it when you're reading. So they kind of can, because you want to like pop in and out of the audiobook and read the book. Some people recommend listening to audiobooks at 1.5 speed or 2-point speed, I find that to just be absolute maniacs. I just can't listen to podcasts or anything at double speed. I find it to be insane. Anyway, my point being, also, Stephen King's readers generally tend to be dude fests. However, Holly is being narrated by Justine Lupe, or Loop, L-U-P-E. I find her to be an absolute delight on this audiobook. She's reading at a very conversational speed. It doesn't feel like overly performed. It is like back in the days in elementary school where someone is reading to you and telling you a great tale. I'm actually favoring the audiobook to the actual text, which is not my usual jam. No. It is usually just a stopgap until I can get back to the book. This, I think, is going to be my main way I'm taking in Holly. So if you do audiobooks through Audible or through your library, through Libby, however you might do audiobooks, I highly recommend the audiobook Holly by Stephen King, narrated by Justine Lupe, or Loop. I don't know how to pronounce it, unfortunately. So that's my weekly rad, Keith. What about you?
Yeah. Well, my weekly rad my weekly rads usually end up being the same thing every week because I do the same thing every week. Mm-hmm. But obviously I've been diving into I've been working on my old show.
Oh, right.
For the first time in a very long time, and revisiting my old show, I Got Fired, coming up with version 3.0, and it has been so much fun. Sort of re-breaking it, rebuilding it, and re-demoing an entire score again. But you know what? That's my jam. That's the thing that I love so much, and it's been really, really fun to get into that. So I have been in the basement, skrelting the most ridiculous nonsense, as always, because that's what I do. And
I've said it before. I'll say it many times again. Hundreds and hundreds of auditions in my life, and more than any other song is the title track from that show. I sing it a lot, and it almost without fail gets a great reception because it's just funny as hell, and it's so relatable. So yeah, man, I'm so glad to know that it's still live.
I mean, we'll see. We'll see, but
Keith, if someone is in the basement skrelting it, or someone is singing it at an audition, it is alive.
I mean, it's alive in some fashion for sure. So no, it's it's just a discussion for a different thing. But like I am endlessly fascinated, perhaps just because of narcissism, but like fascinated by my perspective is continually changing on that experience and that show and what happened in real life. This is based on a real life story. Obviously, I got fired, and like re-examining that and realizing, my understanding of my own culpability in that situation is continuing to shift towards, oh no, I was the asshole. Right? And how do you turn that in? How do you adjust that in the show? Now that it's 15 years later. I don't know. It's crazy. It's interesting. Anyway, it's been fun. Yeah. That's my rant.
Okay. Well, folks, there you have it. I want to say thank you to all of our patrons. Speaking of Thanksgiving, I could get on a tearful soapbox here. I won't do so. I'll just say thank you to everyone who has supported us, not just through the Patreon page and not just watching all the shows with us, but for your comments, your concern when necessary, even your lambasting, even your questioning, your trolldom, because it makes you.
Our patrons don't troll.
No, not our patrons. I meant everybody who's ever kind of interacted with the show. The good, the bad, the ugly has kept us on our toes, but mostly the good we appreciate. Especially those who put their dollars behind their support. That's never necessary, always appreciated. You can get into the $1 support level and get all of the fun content because we want you all involved and part of the family. It's patreon.com/K&M. Keith.
Yeah.
This is the end of the episode. Insert music. Folks, have a great Thanksgiving holiday. We're not missing any time. All of our stuff's coming. Until then, keep on doing the things you find fun. Don't let anybody yuck your yum. And from Keith Varney, Mike and Deglio, keep on geeking on.